Hello, everyone. My name is Jack Bunce, and I'm your host here at the Decentralized Psychedelics podcast. Today, we are excited to share with you episode 2 of the DSci podcast. My host for this episode was Amanda Reiman. She is the founder of Personal Plants and the co-founder of Sacred Garden. She's also an activist, professor, and researcher with 20 years of experience studying the relationship between people and their plants. Her experience as the manager of marijuana law and policy for the Drug Policy Alliance enabled her to make real change in how the world treats medicinal plants like cannabis. Amanda was also the first chairwoman of the Medical Cannabis Commission for the City of Berkeley and taught classes on drug use and policy at UC Berkeley for over a decade. She strives to empower, enlighten, and guide others to take their healing and creative journey into their own hands by spreading knowledge and access to information and inspiration. And this conversation is no different. We go over a host of really interesting topics, and we really talk about how do we make this practical when we're bringing the worlds of Web 2 and Web 3 together. So I hope you enjoy the show. Please let me know if you have any feedback, guests you'd like to suggest, or just want to say that you liked it. So feel free to drop a little like on the bottom there if you do like this, and subscribe because we'll be making more. Thank you. Enjoy the show. Okay, cool. So I guess to start off, would you just share a little bit about what's going on with Sacred Garden? Because last time we spoke, I got a little... I guess a potential promise or a hint that it would be live soon. And I'm just curious to hear, has that happened yet? Are people dropping in? What's going on with it?
Yeah, so we are absolutely live. We went live a few weeks ago. And, so Sacred Garden is a phygital community, which is a word that I'm embracing and liking every day because I like to say it. It's fun to say. So for folks that don't know what that means, phygital is a melding of the physical and digital worlds. And in this kind of Web3 space, which we'll talk about, there's a lot of focus on how do we create in real life feelings, experiences that can also be recreated in the digital world as a way of expanding people's knowledge, access, and community. And one of the great things about the phygital space is that it really helps enable stigmatized communities to come together by unveiling a variety of access points. And, when we talk about psychedelic plants in particular, the ability for in real life and physical connection can be difficult, partially because of the stigmatization of the plants themselves, of the people who use plants, the legal status of the plants around the world. So the idea of being able to meet up in real life and work with these plants is not accessible for everyone. At the same time, you can only go so far in the digital world, right? So you can show people plants, you can talk to people about plants, you can explain what plants are, but it's still a very 2D experience at this point. So Sacred Garden Community has a focus on bridging these two worlds around the cause of psychedelic plant cultivation, conservation, and education to figure out ways for people to engage with this cause, with this mission, with this area of botany in ways that make sense to them based on where they live, what their goals are, and what they have available to them. So as you know, some places in the world, you can actually get together and legally consume mushrooms or other psychedelic plants as part of a community, as part of a church, and that is allowed. In other parts of the world, simply talking about these plants can be very stigmatizing and dangerous. So how do we enable the love, the reverence people have for these plants and use technology in order to get around some of the legal and stigmatization challenges? So Sacred Garden was set up as a truly phygital community with an NFT or digital asset being a membership token to joining the community. And we really will talk more about Web3 and what that is and that buzzword, right? But in our minds, this community is for everyone. So one of our challenges is how do we create a community that's exciting and enticing to the Web3 crowd while still making it accessible and understandable to the Web2 crowd? And so we launched our digital membership token as an NFT a few weeks ago, and we can talk about what those look like. But if you possess one of these membership tokens, the benefits of the community exist for you in both the in real life and digital space. And it will always continue to be that way. So whether you're interested in growing plants in your backyard, whether you're interested in attending online classes around psychedelics, or whether you're more interested in virtual and augmented reality, we are creating access points for folks in each of those spaces as they start to meld more into kind of one space overall.
That's pretty cool. It sounds like there's quite a lot going on there, but you've really tried to boil it down into like, how do we bring this to people in a practical way that feels right? Because you are playing in the Web3 space, right? Which I think a lot of people are sort of afraid of, skeptical of. And the biggest question is often like, okay, Web3, crypto, NFTs, what's the utility? Like, what are we really doing here that's unique that we can't just do as a community or as people in like the digital world already? And I guess I'm curious, it sounds like the membership is maybe the starting point for that. Would you share more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, a lot of these are buzzwords that get attached to social media and pop culture ideals that make people really think that they're kind of more flashy than they really are. The reality is these are just tools. These are just technological tools, just like websites, just like digital payments that are evolving. And, I think one of the big differentiators when we talk about the Web3 space is this idea of gatekeeping. And the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, a big part of that is who's giving you permission to talk to someone else, to access someone else. What kind of gatekeepers do you have to go through to promote what you're doing, to talk about what you're doing, and where are their biases and how do those biases impact your ability to be successful? And, I've been working in cannabis for over 20 years. We have a lot of gatekeepers in the digital space that make it difficult for cannabis businesses to operate. We can't advertise on social media. We can't set up e-commerce stores. It's difficult for us to find payment processors. It's difficult for us to work with banks. We're constantly being censored in what we can say. I've had numerous videos taken down off TikTok just for showing a cannabis plant in a state where it's completely legal. So there's a lot of gatekeeping in Web 2 and a lot of centralization in Web 2. And I think one of the goals of Web 3 is to get past that centralization, get past that gatekeeping by creating secure systems that don't require gatekeepers to facilitate them. And so NFTs is an example of that. An NFT is a digital asset, plain and simple. Sometimes it's an ape. Sometimes it's something else, but it's just a digital asset that shows that you belong to a community or that you own something. And even though it's not as sexy to talk about, in the future, I see things like house deeds being NFTs. Concert tickets, I think, is a great example. So right now, if I want to go see a band play, I usually have to buy a ticket through Ticketmaster or some other third-party system that, one, posts a ton of additional fees, two, takes money away from the band, from what they could be making, and three, is really vulnerable to counterfeit tickets and to other ways that people get scammed. So it's like, how do we create a system where we don't have to pay a ton of fees in order to see a concert, where the band gets the majority of the money that we are paying, and where that ticket is not vulnerable to scams or to counterfeit? And NFTs really serve that well, right? A band can create an NFT for their concert. It's unique. There's a transparent record of who owns that NFT, that it's authentic. And then the band can collect most of the money that people pay to actually see them play. So when explained that way, it's not super exciting, but it's really the evolution that we're talking about. So when we look at something like Sacred Garden, we are issuing an NFT as a membership token. And that membership token gives you all the rights and privileges of being part of our community, which in our case means access to physical cuttings and seeds of psychedelic plants. It means online classes that you get to attend for free. It means that any other inventions or utilities that we come up with for our community can be immediately accessed by people that hold that NFT. So just as a little comparison, a lot of us, myself included, have purchased gym memberships somewhere in our lifetime. And with that membership comes an actual physical card that you have to bring with you to the gym. Sometimes you can put it on your keychain. You scan it. It shows that that's who you are, that you're a member, and that you can go into the gym. But what if that gym membership, instead of being that physical card, was a digital asset that you purchased, that belonged to you, that was registered on the blockchain as being belonging to you, and you don't have to bring a card with you when you go to the gym. But hey, now the gym offers some kind of new nutritional program that members get. Instead of having to issue a whole new card, you just add that utility onto the digital asset that already exists, completely seamless. Now let's say that a new salad bar restaurant opens in town and wants to offer members of the gym a 10% discount on salads because they figure good partnership, right? People who go to the gym like salads. That can all be added into the utility of the gym NFT. So now that NFT is your token to get into the gym. It's your token to get to whatever classes and other things the gym offers. It's your token to get a 10% discount at the salad place. Maybe now the local kayaking rental place wants to offer a discount as well. So that's figured into the token. And this is all happening through one digital asset. Seems pretty simple. But yet people are kind of like, oh, NFTs are this crazy thing. And I'm like, they're really not. We all remember a time when you couldn't pay at the register by just tapping your phone to a little, display. But that's happening now. And so it's really just an evolution of technology. So as I mentioned, because psychedelic plants and the psychedelic community are so stigmatized and ostracized from using more traditional methods of payment, of communication, of community building, we see the decentralization aspect of Web3 and of NFTs as being uniquely suited for marginalized communities, stigmatized communities who often can't take advantage of the current technology because of the gatekeeping that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And you laid it out with such a nice example with the gym membership. And
I
all of its
love
perks.
analogies. I got to tell you, Jack, I was a college professor for over a decade, and nothing beats an analogy for explaining a complicated topic. So I pull them out all the time. I got all kinds of them.
Love it. So for this gym membership, for your token that gates access to the community, who are the members and who are the different stakeholders? Who are the kayak centers, the food, the sandwich bars? Like, who do you have that's sort of the players in this community right now? And who are you hoping to maybe explore involving in the future?
Well, that's a great question. So, our members are everyone. So anyone who's interested in psychedelic plants, whether you want to grow them or you just want to support their conservation, what we're really trying to create with this community, honestly, is abundance. We're trying to create abundance of psychedelic plants. The more people that grow these plants, whether you're going to consume them or not, the better it is going to be because we will have them. They will be everywhere. And the more abundance we can make with these plants, the harder it is for the government to come in and say, no, you can't have those. So, if only a handful of people are growing ayahuasca vine, then if the government comes in and says, this is no longer a legal activity, it's going to be really hard to fight back against that. If it's in almost every garden in America, it's going to be much harder for them to come along and say, no, this is no longer an allowed activity. So we really are encouraging people around abundance of psychedelic plants. But we also recognize that not everyone has access to psychedelic seeds and cuttings, and not everyone has access to the information. So in terms of who is the salad place, who is the kayak place that we're partnering with, from an educational standpoint, we're working with Psychedelics Today, which is an amazing organization that produces a ton of great content around not just the plants themselves, but the history, the use, the integration. And so being able to work with them and access classes and materials that they produce for members of the community. And then actually a physical garden. So in addition to working with Sacred Garden, I am the founder of Personal Plants, which is a psychedelic plant nursery. Right now, we work with one garden in Oakland, California that produces seeds and cuttings for members of our community, for our customers. But one of the things we want to build with Sacred Garden is a decentralized psychedelic plant marketplace. So anyone that's a member of our community will have access to the marketplace, and we'll be able to match you with an entheogenic gardener near where you live that produces seeds and cuttings for you to be able to start your own sacred garden. So right now, those are really the two areas we're focused on, right? This idea of phygital. So the physical, the actual in real life network of gardens that you can access and get seeds and cuttings, and the digital, the education, the online classes, and then creating opportunities in the virtual reality and augmented reality spaces for people to learn about these plants and to also experience these plants in their native habitats. We're a conservation company. So one of our goals is to reduce the carbon footprint associated with ecotourism, associated with people feeling like they have to traipse into the Amazon in order to understand ayahuasca. We want to bring people to those spaces using virtual reality so that they don't feel like they necessarily have to visit them in the physical sense. We're not a Web3 company. We're not an NFT company. We're a psychedelic plant conservation and cultivation company. And we use these technological tools in order to facilitate that mission.
I love it. That's so meaningful. And one thing that I'm curious about is it sounds like a form of sort of healthy activism, right? This encouraging people around the country. And are you global? Is right now the main focus just in America?
Well, we're global in terms of who members can be of the community, and that anyone across the world can access the classes and the things that we do in the virtual and augmented reality space. But there's also the reality that shipping agriculture internationally is very tricky, whether it's tomatoes or entheogens, because of rules around pests and invasive species. So we have to kind of keep the plants in the same country. And that was really one of the goals of developing this global marketplace, so that no matter where you are in the world, we want to be able to have onboarded farmers in every parts of the globe that are hospitable to growing plants, so that if you are in Canada or the UK or India, you can connect with a farmer near you that also, cuts down on the carbon footprint of distribution. So we're not shipping plants from the US all over the world. It also helps create healthy local ecosystems of psychedelic plant gardening. And it also helps acclimate the plants to climates that they're used to. So if I'm sending a cutting even from Oakland to Pennsylvania, that can be a very different climate. That plant has to travel across the entire country. It might be going from a climate of 80 degrees to a climate of 95 to 100 degrees, which can be really difficult for the plant. But if we're keeping this close by and you're ordering plants from folks in your same climate zone, then I think it also increases the likelihood of the plant surviving. So those are some of the ways that we're trying to engage people globally. But if you want to put on a VR headset and go visit the garden in Oakland, or if you want to put on a VR headset and join us in the metaverse for a botany class, that will be available globally.
Wow, that sounds really cool. I'm curious to hear more about that because, I remember when I was in university, this is 5 or 6 years ago, and someone had designed this really arbitrary, dinosaur visualization. And you could just take your phone and be like, I want to put a dinosaur here in front of you, and it was they were a computer science student. And this felt to me pretty revolutionary, pretty neat to be doing. And it seemed like quite a bit of work. So I'm curious to hear more. Do you have a virtual reality developer? How do we, and what's the timeline look like for someone like me to attend something or view something of Sacred Gardens in VR?
It's already happening. So we did a Matterport scan of the garden in Oakland, which you can walk through on our website. But if you have an Oculus or a VR headset, you can actually go to the website and look at it in virtual reality. And, there's a lot of technology that is progressing so quickly around augmented reality. So there's actually an app that we use. It's on my phone. Let me see if I can remember the name of it. It's called Polycam, where you can scan an object and then you can put it in augmented reality. So, we have an ayahuasca vine that we take to the beach. We have crested huachuma that's been out to the Golden Gate Bridge. And we can basically save these images and then make them appear anywhere. So, you could have an ayahuasca vine just kind of sitting on your counter in augmented reality and examine it. And then we're creating spaces in virtual reality that is completely immersive. So, the ability to go into a virtual reality space that is a sacred garden and look at these plants up close and personal and understand more about how they grow. So we have an amazing developer that's part of our team, one of our co-founders, Eli Robbins. He's an immersive experience designer and architect. And so he has created a plant simulator, which is going to be one of the next utilities that we release to our community. Ayahuasca is the first vine that we are simulating. And basically, if you remember the old Tamagotchis from the 1990s, where it was just this little digital creature that you had to feed and take care of, and then it would like poop, and you had to clean up its poop, and it was like super exciting, very early technology. So just kind of envision the 2022 or 2023 version of that, where it is completely realistic and responsive. So you'll be able to feed it sun, you'll be able to feed it soil, you'll be able to feed it water, and then you'll actually be able to watch it grow as it would in real life to learn more about how these plants evolve and progress. And so giving people the opportunity, no matter where you are in the world, to grow a plant in a virtual space is about accessibility. I'm very fortunate. I live out in the country. You're out in the country. Like, our ability to grow plants, as many plants as we want, and to kind of create environments for our plants is something that not a lot of folks have access to. I used to live in downtown Oakland. I had a tiny little balcony. That's where I grew my cannabis, but the ability to grow a variety of plants was not really accessible to me. So we want people to be able to learn about plants. There's so much talk, Jack, about consumption of psychedelics, and I 100% support that. I think psychedelic plants have amazing potential for mental health treatment. I think they have amazing potential for just human introspection about who we are and what our role is in society and on this planet. But I also know that as a society, we love to focus on consumption without connecting back to the source. And I saw this in spades with food and, the idea that we are very disconnected from where our food comes from. And then I saw it with cannabis legalization and the disconnect between the consumer packaged good chocolate bar in the dispensary in the bright, shiny plastic and the plant that it actually came from. So looking at psychedelics and the focus on consumption and changing the laws so that people can have access to the medicines, I don't want us to get disconnected from the source. So you might say that one of the missions of Sacred Garden is to ensure that that connection to the source stays intact. And if that means growing a plant, fantastic. If that means looking at a plant in virtual or augmented reality, fantastic. We just want people to understand when we have mushroom dispensaries and DMT dispensaries and these other kinds of end result retail, we want folks to stay connected to the source. And so if we can start that now and introduce kind of a tradition of growing a plant before you consume it, I do think that we have an opportunity to make up for some of those mistakes from these other sectors and using technology to facilitate it, to make it interesting and fun and gamified. You were talking about philanthropy before. I look at this as a gamification of philanthropy. I mean, when you look at how philanthropy has operated prior, when I've worked in nonprofits pretty much my whole adult life, so I'm very familiar with the please, we're doing a membership drive. We're doing a fundraising drive. We're doing really important work. Please give us some money. You give some money, you get a tote bag or a thank you email or a hat or something. And then you kind of go about your business until the next year when it's time for the membership drive again. But if we can keep people engaged through utility and education and events while still donating proceeds to nonprofits, I think that you're keeping people engaged in that philanthropy. So we do have nonprofit partners that we work with, Chacruna Institute, iSeers, and Grow Medicine. We donate 10% of everything that we make, split between those three organizations, and we'll continue to do so for the length of Sacred Garden as a business and as a community. So when you come into the community, you're learning about these organizations. You're learning about their work. You know, we're offering opportunities to engage with these organizations. And then that becomes part of the community all the time and not just something that happens, you know, once or twice a year.
Amazing. Yeah. I love how thoughtful this is. And like the IRI with Chacruna, Grow Medicine, these are definitely organizations that are on my radar too, as I explore like with some of my projects, including this, like how do we make a meaningful contribution to people who have been stewards of this medicine and to Indigenous groups. And it's sort of like, they're like plug and play, you know, like you can just, oh, hey, like we'll take some money from you. And, you know, that feels really good to me. And the other thing that's coming up is this is sort of like the word movement is coming up. And I know there's been a lot of talk lately. You probably saw that article To the Field comparing, you know, fields versus movements. And we have to be careful about being in sort of this dogmatic way of looking at things. But it really feels like Pokemon Go is the example that comes to mind. And like that spread like wildfire, right? And it's like, it was AR, which you're doing. And so many people were playing it, but like, was this really like a force for good? And it kind of feels like an evolution here where it's like, you got like your Tamagotchi, you got your Pokemon Go. And it's like, well, hold on. What if we made this like a nonprofit and educational and just sort of a more of a community than just a game? So I'm super stoked to hear all of this. I think this sounds really cool. What do you envision for how this is going to grow? And what can people who are listening do to get involved? You know, like what if somebody wants to start farming and they don't know very much? Like what are some of the different avenues that people can take to become participants here with you?
Oh, that's a great question. So on the farmer front, if there's any folks out there that are non-commercial backyard entheogenic gardeners, we're going to be doing a call out here in, you know, a few weeks, telling people how they can sign up to participate in the Farmer Network. We're looking for people who want to get involved for the sake of abundance. These aren't folks who are like, this is going to be my full-time job, being an entheogenic gardener, but we do know that there's a lot of people out there that are doing this and that are doing it because they're passionate about the plants. So we're going to be inviting them to join our network. And, you know, we'll talk to them a little bit more about how this will work. You know, we're basically creating this on our website. People will be able to buy plants with credit card or crypto, and then they will be part of the network. And then they will make 80%. So we basically take 20% as a hosting fee. Because we host all of the payments, we do all of the background kind of smart contracts and everything that's involved on our platform. But we really want this to be about making a gardener part of a community and part of an ecosystem. So there'll be an opportunity for people to get involved with that. People can become members of the community by purchasing an NFT off of our website, which you can also purchase with a crypto wallet or a credit card because we want to make it really accessible. And then, you know, we have all of our social media accounts. We have a YouTube channel that has short videos about a ton of different plants in the garden in Oakland, where you can learn a little bit about the history of each plant. And then for people that want to grow, you know, if you want to purchase seeds and cuttings, you can do that from the Personal Plants shop. And then also on the Personal Plants shop, we have care instructions. So even if you're not purchasing plants from us, you can absolutely access the care instructions so that you can learn how to grow these plants yourself. And, you know, spoiler alert, they're not that complicated, but they are mostly Amazonian plants. So thinking about climate, I live in Mendocino County, California. It is exceptionally hot and dry here. So we're talking about temperatures up in the upper 90s, lower 100s in the summer with no rain and no humidity. So I have some plants like cannabis that do unbelievably well here. I also have a datura that is doing fabulously. My salvia is very sad. It is a bit hot and dry for salvia where I live. I'm trying very hard to keep her alive. But, we want people to understand the environments where these plants grow best. Very few of any of them can tolerate frost, which are annuals, which are perennials. But we also want folks to understand the sacred plants that live near them that people don't even know are sacred plants. So, I'll give an example of passion flower. So passion flower, gorgeous plant, if you've never seen one, such an unusual flower, really fantastic. It's a climbing vine. It does very well in warm climates. It is an analog for ayahuasca. So ayahuasca contains beta-carbolines, but it more importantly is an MAOI inhibitor. So it's usually mixed with other plants like chacruna in order to produce the psychedelic effect. Passion flower also contains beta-carbolines, also an MAOI inhibitor, grows everywhere. Ayahuasca vine can take 15 years to get to where it's big enough to actually use it for a brew. Passion flower grows very quickly. So, we want to educate people, of course, on the entheogens that they're familiar with, but also on the entheogens that they may not even know are entheogens. Ice plant is another example. Delosperma capari is a type of ice plant. It grows everywhere in California. I actually picked up a couple cuttings at my local regular nursery. Contains DMT. Sorry, dogs. So, we want people not only to help them understand more about kind of ayahuasca and chacruna and datura and brugmansia and these plants that are kind of more well known for being entheogens, but also the plants that are surrounding them every single day that also contain these amazing chemicals, because you don't have to grow Amazonian plants to experience entheogens. So part of our mission is to help people see the sacred beauty in the plants that may already be in their climate and in their ecosystem, as well as introduce them to kind of the more well-known psychedelic entheogenic plants.
Amazing. Yeah. And I in a similar vein, I heard some folks who I know in the UK talking about morning glory and how that just grows all over the place. Well, at least where they live. So yeah,
same
this
here.
is really...
I have morning glory growing in my garden. The morning glory seeds are psychedelic. But something else I just want to bring up really quickly as we're talking about kind of these other types of psychedelics that you might encounter, they're not all for consumption. And that's something else we really want people to understand, that there's a great responsibility and care and education that needs to come with consuming these plants. The nightshade family, your brugmansia, your datura, don't eat those. Don't eat those unless you're with somebody that really knows what they're doing or you yourself really know what you're doing. And so as we start to see entheogen psychedelic plants become more legally available and accepted, we know that people are going to be seeking out plants to consume. And we want folks to understand the plant itself before they get all hung up on the consumption piece. And I think morning glories are a great example. They're very abundant. They're very easy to grow. The seeds are what are psychedelic, but you really have to take care when you're eating these seeds. You have to know what to do, how to make the brew, what it's going to do to you, how many you should take, what the dosing is like, what the risks are like. And so I feel that knowing the plant is a better way to mediate these potential risks than just stopping by a store and picking up some kind of morning glory seed pack and then deciding you're going to go home and ingest them. These plants need to be taken seriously. They're not frivolous, and consuming them is not frivolous. And they can bring with them the most amazing opportunity for awakening and education and spirituality, but only if we take a serious approach to them and don't treat them like potato chips or something that you can just ingest and, maybe you ingest too much and get a stomach ache. That's not what we're talking about here. So, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you're bringing this up. And I definitely hear that this, like, create or cultivating a relationship with the plant as you grow it and really developing the sense of empathy and thinking, like having that time to think about harm reduction is great. And I'm curious to hear about if Sacred Garden or maybe Personal Plants have resources that they would direct people to, or that you have on harm reduction.
So that is a great question. And that's really where our partnerships come in. So Psychedelics Today, any member of our community can access a free course from them on psychedelic use and integrating psychedelics into your life. So that's really where the partnerships come in. We will teach you how to grow the plant, and then we will connect you to amazing organizations that can help you with safe consumption. Double Blind is another great organization that we love to work with that has great content. And then there's community groups like Sisters in Psychedelics, which is up in Vancouver, which is one of our community partners, which really helps facilitate knowledge around consumption through in real life meetups, experiences, and ceremonies. So it's really about building an ecosystem all the way from seed to consumption with trusted partners that focus on these different aspects of the plant. We don't want to be everything for everyone because there's amazing organizations out there that are doing this work, but we absolutely saw a void in the area of the plant, in the area of growing the plant and understanding the plant. And so that's where we decided to start and to really focus our efforts, and then bringing in partners that can help people focus on the other pieces, the consumption piece, the indigenous community pieces, which we can't pretend to speak for those communities.
Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. My cup's pretty full here. I feel like you've shared so much amazing information. I feel really excited to hear about everything that you've shared, and it just feels like you're a force for good, a force to be reckoned with in this emerging field where there is so much need for thoughtful education, responsibility, resilient communities, and just healthy ecosystems that kind of tie different organizations and people together. So, huge commending you. And if there's anything else, is there anything else that you'd like to share or talk about with regards to information you think people should know, or your mission here, or just anything that comes to mind?
Well, like I said, I worked in cannabis for over 20 years. And I think that there's a lot we can learn from the trajectory of cannabis. And, cannabis is a sacred plant. It's an entheogen. People might argue whether it's a psychedelic plant, but I think it's definitely a plant that helps invite the divine within and helps with spiritual healing and growth. It's also a plant that we co-opted into our consumerism. And I understand why. The consumption patterns of cannabis, the relative risk of using cannabis, how it fits into our daily lives, I think made it pretty ripe for the pickings in terms of capitalism and, kind of corporations and consumer packaged goods and how that grows. But I learned a lot through that experience about what the early days of cannabis taught us. And my research on cannabis started by studying early dispensaries in the San Francisco Bay Area 20 years ago. And that kind of community arrangement and setup and vibe, and the way that education was incorporated, and the way that the raw plant itself was incorporated into what people were doing, got lost. It got lost in the rush for money and power and corporatization. So I feel like we have an opportunity, partially because the consumption patterns are different. So, even people that are into psychedelics aren't consuming them 4 times a day the way people are consuming cannabis. So I think we have a little bit of breathing room before big corporations see dollar signs. We're definitely seeing the biomedical development of psychedelics, which makes sense because they're a lot easier to study than cannabis and a lot easier to move through the FDA process, given that it's one chemical of interest versus cannabis, which is just a whole host of chemicals inside that plant responsible for the efficacy. So I understand the way that psychedelics are progressing, but I do think we have time to really focus on this community-based model. And I don't think we need mushroom dispensaries, and I don't think we need DMT dispensaries. I think we need access to safe and knowledgeable people and plants and products, but I don't think it needs to be top down. I really do believe that psychedelic plants can be embraced from a community-based model. And if we can create that prior to businesses getting involved, prior to kind of this full legalization, I think we have a chance to really shape what the future of this field looks like. And so that's what we're doing. And I would encourage anyone else who believes that psychedelic plants can be provided from a community-based model, that we can share, that we can grow the plants and have enough for everyone on the planet to experience what they want to experience, then join our community, because that's what we're about. So you can find us on all social media as Sacred Garden without the E's. So SACRDGARDN. That's also our website.com. You can check out Personal Plants, which is mypersonalplants.com. You can check out our shop. We ship anywhere in the U.S. right now. The only plant we sell that is restricted is Salvia divinorum. So we can't ship that to every state, but we do have a list of states on our website. And you can also just download the instructions. Just download the care instructions, learn how to care for these plants. Go to your local nursery and see if they have any huachuma. See if they have ice plants. See if they have passion flower and morning glories. These are all very easy to find at local nurseries. They're all entheogens and they're all legal to grow. So just get out there and start growing and start engaging in this plant relationship. Join our community. And that's really what we're about. So, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. This is very grassroots, no pun intended. But again, we're focused on the abundance of the plants. I want to see these plants growing everywhere. I want everyone to be growing a huachuma cacti. They're super easy to grow, folks. Cacti, it's like foolproof for people that are like, oh, I can't grow plants. I kill everything. Get a cactus. Get a cactus. Get some ice plants. They're succulents. They're super easy to grow. So I just want everyone out there growing plants.
Amazing. I want everyone out there growing plants too. Amanda, this has been really wonderful. I love your passion. I love what you're doing. And I really hope that this continues to blossom, excuse the pun. And yeah, I think for anything else we want to put in the show notes, we'll add so that people can check out all of your links, all of the different resources that we've mentioned. Amanda, thank you so much for joining the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.